All right. Welcome, everyone, to today's webinar. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We are here today to focus on and start with our six-part webinar series, which is taking place over the next 90 days. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We're here for the perfect match and to help and support and educate and hopefully inspire people to be able to find the right sales tool for you. Now today we have Carl is in charge of the slides, so bear with us as we kind of work through this. But as a short introduction, I'm purely the MC, which is funnily enough my initials as well. But good to meet you all. My name's Matt. I'm the Chief Product and Marketing Officer here at Hubble. And as part of this kind of six-part webinar series, as I referenced, today we'll be focusing on sales and marketing alignment. We've got three great speakers. We've got Carl and Maria from Hubble, and we're delighted to be joined by Stephen Higgins over from HubSpot. After today, there is another 5 webinars taking place between now and the 14th of February. We'll be finishing up, which is a nice kind of end to the webinar series on Valentine's Day, which links nicely with our theme, but in the middle of February. So we hope to see a lot of you kind of join us on the journey and join us along the way. Very short introduction into Hubble Digital for those who aren't aware of us. We're kind of a core HubSpot partner. We were founded in 2012. Since then, we've joined with a couple of other agencies along the way. We're about 175 people worldwide, focused and kind of based in 7 locations around the world. And yeah, if I guess you can learn more about us on our website by following us on LinkedIn and everything like that. But I won't focus too much on us today. Like I said, we're here today to focus on sales and marketing alignment. And I think as part of my play, I now pass over to Carl and Maria to kick us off. So Carl, Maria, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Just wanted to welcome you to our webinar today, talking about sales and marketing alignment, and just wanted to give you a little bit of a introduction to us here, my lovely counterpart, Maria. My name is Carl Flightgraf. I am a sales consultant with Hubble Digital since now over a year, but I've been working in sales longer than I care to admit. It's probably been about 10 or 12 years now, and I've worked as the head of sales for a startup. I've been an account manager. I've been a BDR. I've been every sort of which role you can. And so I know what the pains are of sales organizations trying to implement new CRMs. And let me introduce my lovely counterpart, Maria.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Christopheridou. I'm the consulting team lead for EMEA at Hubble. I have been working with HubSpot for the past 7 years, or a little bit more than that. And I've been in marketing for the past 15 years, having worked in China, the UK, Greece, all over the world with global enterprise organizations, trying to help them resolve their marketing pain points. So I know very well how important that alignment between marketing and sales is. And it's very good to be here. And I think with that, we can maybe get started on the topic of the day, right?
Yeah. So
Which is, yeah.
It's marketing and sales working in harmony. And I think just overall resetting everyone's working minds to get away from that idea of working in silos and thinking about the idea of us working in for one greater purpose in an organization, working together. And how do we get there? So how do we get from the chaotic position that many of us find ourselves in, where things aren't aligned, to a position where, hey, we're working together with one targeted goal? And to that end, let's look at what it looks like for a lot of organizations when it's not working great and sort of you're in that traditional relationship.
Yeah, so if we look at the traditional relationship between marketing and sales, and if we use the dating analogy, right? So what we want to be saying is a partnership, and your partner is never against you, is never opposed to you, is always someone you work with side by side. And that's exactly what marketing and sales should be doing. But some of the challenges we often see with organizations of all sizes, to be fair, in terms of the marketing challenges, we see, for example, that when we are developing the ideal customer profile, we don't get the feedback of the sales team, which is crucial to get that, because they are the ones who actually get a first-hand experience talking to the clients, So they have very valuable insights that should be coming back into marketing, not only to help us put that sort of strategic foundation in terms of developing, for example, our ideal customer profile, our life cycle stages, aligning them with the customer journey, but also in order to allow for better campaign attribution, better engagement, feeding all of that useful information back into our marketing campaigns and our marketing efforts. I know this may sound like, oh, this is such a small challenge. Maybe it's not as important, in marketing, I know always tends to get the blame. But this is not, again, about pointing fingers. It's about finding a way to work together in order for both teams to get the best out of the other team. So, Carl, do you want to maybe touch on the sales challenges?
Absolutely. And just to paint a picture here, I think we've all worked in an organization or might have some experience where marketing lives and works in their marketing platform and sales has their own CRM, and there's some kind of integration, there's some kind of handoff, but really these two departments are working completely separately of each other, and this handoff might just happen and there's no feedback going back. It's one directional. And so often you run into situations where sales is going to get a lead, but there's no context. You have no information really about like what brought this person to your website. Why are they looking to interact with your company? They just sort of, here's your name, your phone number, and maybe their job title. And you're just like, okay. And then you have just that information. What do you do with that? You don't know, who do I prioritize? I mean, if your marketing team is working really well, maybe they're giving you 100 leads to work through in a week. Well, you need to prioritize those. So you need to get more information, more context. You need to prioritize them. And then the question is, if those leads are good quality or bad quality, and you say like, hey, I really want you to do this more. I really want this kind of leads, or this doesn't work for us at all. You're not sending that feedback back to marketing. So how do they even know how to do well again in the future? So we see this sort of thing where if you have these two different platforms and they're not integrating, it's going to make it that much more difficult for your colleagues to work well together.
And I think to that, Carl, there's the process that we are going to look at today. There's a way to resolve this by looking at your processes and how you do this technically, like as you said, with integrations. But it's also very much a mindset. It's all around your culture. Again, fostering a culture where collaboration is encouraged between the teams, and there isn't that mindset of we've got our own team, we do our thing, well, we don't know what sales is doing, and vice versa.
Yeah, and that's why 43% of sales and marketing professionals say that lack of accurate shared data on target customers is one of the biggest challenges in aligning sales and marketing. It's huge. It's almost half of everyone are saying that this is a huge opportunity.
But on the bright side, though, if we go to the next slide, we see that 85% of them do recognize as well that aligning sales and marketing is a great opportunity for them to improve their overall business performance. So we don't want to be here and being all like doomsday, what are we going to do? Everything is going bad. There is a solution to this. It isn't something that we cannot resolve. We absolutely can.
And 90% of sales and marketing people admit that they're not aligned on terms of things like strategy, processes, content, and culture. I mean, we all know it. And I think in a lot of ways, it's like the elephant in the room, like, yeah, I know that could be better, but we don't address it. And so here are what we're talking about today are, what are some things that we can do to address that? Because we all, according to this, 90% of us admit that there's something that can be done here. So one of the things that we recommend is to, again, in the culture and in the tools and in the processes, to stop thinking about it so much as marketing and sales. But HubSpot's one of their really brilliant sort of cultural ideas is to develop a smarketing department, a smarketing strategy where your sales and your marketing are working in coordination. And in order to do that, one of the best things you can do is you can actually create a service level agreement, an SLA, between your marketing and sales teams. And so I think a lot of us are familiar with what an SLA is in regards to our external customers. Like we know as our most commonly in our customer service teams, we're going to say, hey, we'll promise you we will answer those tickets within a certain amount of time. We will deliver this. We will keep to that service level agreement as an external customer. But have we ever considered using this as an internal customers and treating our colleagues with the same level of respect and developing those SLAs? Maria, did you want to maybe add something there, or do you have some thoughts about
No,
SLAs internally?
I think what you're saying is exactly right. Like when we work with external clients, this is something that we always tend to do. Like we want to try to set expectations, right? What do you expect from us? What are we going to give back to you? So if we look at the next slide, for example, where we've got some of these examples. So we've also linked, we'll share the deck with all the attendees after the webinar. So you can actually use as well, have the SLA template if you want an example, which we've linked on the slide there. But we can see things like, for example, what are our goals? And I expect that, yeah, there will be a slight difference in terms of what the marketing goals should be and what the sales goals, but there are also overarching goals that both the teams have in terms of the business growth. Then we look at things. Oh, yeah, sorry, Carl.
Oh, sorry. Well, I think one of the best examples of that, and I think the example we all know about, is sales has to close a certain amount of revenue. So for instance, you might calculate and say, look, if we want to hit our new business target every week, we're going to need, let's say, 20 MQLs and quality MQLs. So not just like any old lead that you can find and may even buy, but like we're setting that standard that sales understands, hey, we need this quality of lead and we need this number of them. And so we set that as an expectation. And so every sales manager knows, oh, their sales rep just says, oh, I don't get enough leads. But have you set that expectation clear with marketing? Does marketing have the same understanding as sales does? And I think that's really important.
Absolutely. And a good way to approach this, if you're thinking, yeah, we want to be able to set these goals, but we don't know where to start. If you already use, for example, HubSpot and you have data in your portal, that's the best thing to start reviewing. Work backwards. Look at your existing customers, for example. Have marketing and sales sit down together and do some reverse engineering, right? Looking at existing customers, working backwards. Okay, what assets did they engage with? How was their progression? How was their customer journey? And then try to be realistic when you bring those numbers into your goals and into setting this SLA between these two teams. So you don't want to just start and, because sometimes we also, sales are very ambitious and they tend to set these big goals. It's important that we start realistic based on the data that we have to be able to give everyone that feeling of achievement as well when we hit those goals.
And so one of the goals might be that sales says to marketing, hey, we need so and so many leads in a certain amount of time. But then marketing is going to say to sales that when we give you that lead, we need a promise from you that you're going to contact those within 1 business day, which is really important because 35 to 50% of all sales go to the supplier who responds first. So imagine you have this fantastic marketing department that goes out and gets these leads, and then they sit somewhere waiting in an inbox for your sales team to follow up, and it takes them a week. And they said, oh, we would have bought from you if you had called us on Monday, but it's Thursday. Sorry, you're too late. So it's so important to get that information out there and get it quickly enacted upon. And so we look at where the collaboration can shine, and you see like 27% of the average profit margin. You see conversion rate, you see cost of customer acquisition goes down. You see a huge improvement here where we can definitely improve and make some advantages when we're working together.
And one other thing that we can do to help us prioritize the right leads and help us surface those highly engaged leads is what we refer to as lead scoring. Now, some of you may be already familiar with this term. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the concept, even if you don't use HubSpot, but it's how we put that into practice in HubSpot and how can that help us. So when we're referring to lead scoring, we're talking about a set of points that are assigned to the customers, either based on demographic information that we have collected from them or behavioral information that we have from them. For example, again, looking at that reverse engineering, looking at the existing customer data. If we know that we're targeting 3 industries and the majority of our clients are coming from education, for example, then when we set up our lead scoring criteria, we can say, if a prospect has come from the education industry, then we assign 10 points to them compared to giving them 5 points that may be for a prospect from another industry. That way, we can have automation built in the portal that allows us and helps sales know who to prioritize, who to speak to, and it's not manually having to go through that. And actually, I'm going to let Carl speak about a very interesting feature that can help us with that now.
So if anyone was at Inbound or watching the presentation at Inbound, you'll know that HubSpot just released a fantastic new leads tool, which completely changes the way that marketing hands customers over to sales. There's this really powerful new tool. If you haven't used it yet, absolutely recommend it. And one thing that we've actually built for a customer already is based on the lead scoring and the criteria in the background. We set those leads as either being hot, warm, or cold. And that gives, so like you might get all those leads in the morning, your BDRs are saying like, okay, but who do I call first? Is it just, do I just want to call the last one in or the first one in? Or maybe this one, based on the criteria, what marketing knows, this one is actually going to be hot. So really, really cool functionality that we can set up. And these are the kinds of things. Also a big advantage of working with an agency that has a lot of experience with HubSpot.
Can I ask you a question on that, Carl?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there's going to be people in the audience today that may not be using HubSpot for their sales. They only could be using HubSpot for marketing, and they could be using Salesforce. Is this something that you think is still applicable to them? And is this something that we can work around?
100%. We're going to talk about integrations in a little bit. I've got some information about that actually. So that's a great point. We'll bring that up here.
Okay, besides lead scoring, another thing that is also very, very important is the lead nurturing, right? And again, we see this happen often where we might build some content, some campaigns around nurturing these leads, but maybe it's not reviewed as often, maybe it's not as optimized, maybe our target audience changed or our insights changed, and we don't go back to reflect that. But we do see, as you see on the statistic here, that when we nurture leads, that results in an average 20% increase in sales opportunities compared to leads that are not nurtured. Again, let's take that back to the dating analogy, right? You wouldn't go on a first date and say to someone, will you marry me? You would go on that date, and then you would go on another date, and you would have discussions, and you would try to find, how is that person like? What do we have in common? What can we talk about? You wouldn't just show up one day and be like, well, please marry me. Well, maybe for some of you, maybe the first date has worked.
Maybe that's how dating works in Scotland. I'll have to.
I wouldn't know. I'm a married woman, so I can't comment on that.
So getting back to your point about some of the solutions that are available to really resolve these things. So when we're talking about marketing and sales, looking at the different type of CRM solutions, we can really recommend using HubSpot as your unified platform, everyone working in the same system. So that's option one. And obviously we're big fans of that for many obvious reasons. But the other one would be to do, for instance, in your example, we use marketing for HubSpot and and Salesforce for sales. How is that integration set up, and is that set up really well, and is it bi-directional? Is that integration something that is feeding information from marketing into your sales platform and then getting the information from sales back into the marketing platform? Because when you do that, you'll have advantages in reporting, alignment, overview of the customer journey, and you're going to get customer feedback that you can work through the entire journey. And so one of the first most basic solutions and advantages of having this all integrated or in one platform is when you get a new lead as a sales rep to go look at the entire record of what's happened so far and what has that contact done in the marketing side. So that when you go on the website, the first thing you can see on the activity view of that contact is what emails have they looked at and opened? What forms have they submitted? What website pages have they been on? What has been their entire interaction? What got them to the point where we're considering them a marketing qualified lead? So that when you do have that first interaction, that first call, you can say, hi, hey, I saw that you were on our page and you were looking at the pricing and looking at this solution. I'm here to provide that value to you, and it's immediately more relevant. It's immediately more valuable, as opposed to just saying, hi, Mr. Smith, I saw you were on our website. Like it's just a completely different level of interaction based on that information that you get. And another example that I think which is so cool, again, back to my new favorite functionality in HubSpot, is the new leads feature, is the leads feedback when they're not qualified. So we want to say that every MQL is going to convert and turn into a deal. Unfortunately, it's not the reality. And at some point in that process, we're going to lose leads. We're going to disqualify leads. But what's the reason that we're either closing deals lost or we're maybe rejecting those leads? And for instance, I always put in a reason in there called location not available. And I like to think about the example, let's say that you're a UK-based company and you can serve clients in the UK, Ireland, and in Europe, but you're not currently able to deliver in North America. Now, let's say you've got 10 leads every month that are coming in from Canada, and they're great leads. They're really nice people. Canadian people are lovely, but you can't sell to them. You don't have the legal entity to sell to them at this point, but you're getting 10 leads a month that are coming in from Canada. What's going on there? And are you giving that feedback to marketing? Because Maria, what would that mean for a marketing team if they were targeting in the wrong geographic region?
Well, it could be, if we look at the positive, it could be an opportunity for expansion. But yeah, you're right. But it could also be that, something is going wrong in our marketing, and perhaps, our ads are not being directed to the right countries, to the right audiences. So it's something that we need to look at, which brings us to the next slide about the importance of campaign attribution. And this doesn't just have to do with proving, how much revenue each campaign is generating, but it's also proving which campaign messaging is resonating with our audience, which again can be fed back into sales and say, okay, we know that, talking about this pain point actually resonates with our audience more. So when you speak to prospects, maybe make a point to raise, on that. This campaign attribution is something that everybody seems to know. It's very important. Not everyone seems to be able to get that right. We are lucky working with HubSpot that we're able to link all the assets together of one campaign. So we're able to see how holistically all these assets are collaborating. And then we're able to report on that, which is very, very important. But again, it's not about just having the reports. It's about interpreting the imports and actioning these insights.
Yeah, if you're not basing your marketing decisions based on revenue KPIs, then you're really missing out. And I know a lot of marketing departments that they don't see the revenue KPIs because they're locked in a different system, and that has major effects. So are you making really the best decisions for your business? And so we see that 87% of sales and marketing leaders believe that the collaboration will have a big impact. So we know that there's opportunities here. And one of the big things we see is, smarketing is, of course, AI. Everyone is talking about, and we see that 18% of sales and marketing say they use a generative AI. So we have such a big opportunity here to build efficiency, open up things where we can say, like, we've got 80% of people that aren't using this yet, and there's such powerful tools here. So I think we can do a lot here.
Yeah, and just to add to that, because actually we recently had a discussion on Matthew's podcast about AI too, which is called Evolving. Something else that we see now with AI, because it's such a buzzword and everybody's talking about AI, and it can definitely help with the sales teams as well. Don't feel like you have to start with a big change. AI doesn't have to bring a massive change to your organization. You can start with smaller, trying out smaller AI products, or for example, starting with conversation intelligence that is already something that's based on machine learning in HubSpot and algorithms that can tell you, for example, what are most of your prospects talking about on this call, and it can give you that insight without you having to manually review every single call. So don't feel like the change and the shift towards AI has to be like, completely transformative to your company. Take smaller steps to allow for the team to adjust and to learn. And we're lucky again that HubSpot already has implemented loads of AI features in their tools that you can explore and start small.
And finally, one thing that I think you should never lose track of when you're implementing a new system and a new strategy and a new configuration is user acceptance. It doesn't matter how much bells and whistles and incredible functionality your system has in your CRM, is if you don't get that user acceptance, if you don't do the user acceptance testing, you don't understand that the system is intuitive and helpful, then it doesn't matter. Because the most powerful tool in the world that doesn't get opened, that doesn't matter. And the biggest thing is also data. So everything that we do, all the reporting, all the impact that we have all comes down to what kind of data is in the CRM. And if you're not getting good data, if you have built a system where people just sort of scroll through and just put periods and mandatory fields and click to the next slide and move to the next part of it, it doesn't matter how good the system is. So always consider the fact that user acceptance and getting that user acceptance can be the most important make or break part to your implementation of a new strategy.
That's a very good point, Carl. And again, I think that has to do with the mindset and the culture, making sure that everybody understands the investment, the impact this can have on the organization, the impact it can have on their productivity and their results. I think communicating that message before you start investing in these changes and these platforms is crucial. And with that, I think we can hand it over to Stephen, the sales director at HubSpot. Very excited to have you here, Stephen. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, I'll hand it over to you to walk us through your slides.
Cool. So let me share my screen really quickly with you guys. And let me get into present mode. 1 second. Cool. We all looking good there? We can see me in the slides?
Yes,
yeah?
We can.
Good. Super. Well, thanks a million for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it. So I'm a sales director here at HubSpot. I've been here for the last just coming up on 9 years, which in the tech world is I'm a dinosaur basically at this point. But I was here from the very early days of HubSpot in Dublin to where we are today. So been very much at the coalface of how the company has evolved, and particularly how sales and marketing software has evolved over the last number of years, which is, has given me some really good insight in how to use it well as well myself over the last years, and what works and what doesn't. So what we want to look at today is kind of leveraging data for sales success. Okay, that's what systems should give us. They should output data that make your job better, easier, and you far more efficient. And we want to actually understand the metrics that matter, because often the problem we have with software is you get lots of data, but what matters? Where do you need to look? So what we hope to help you with today is to give you some insight into how both HubSpot and our colleagues at Aircall, the data that we look at and the pieces that we think that matter. So what we did was we did a survey of over 1,000 global sales professionals that looked at how they use different pieces of software, what data they care about, what matters to them. So hopefully you guys can see and understand maybe the places you should be looking or you can be missing, because that's something I'm always really interested in understanding is, what are other leaders looking at? Am I looking at the right stuff because it suits me that number looks good, or are there other darker corners of the CRM or of the system that I need to look in to make sure that I'm on top of the right trends, I'm looking at the right number, and I'm leveraging that data the right way? So there's a couple of key takeaways and insights that you're going to get from understanding this, the survey that we did. So we're going to look at the top sales metrics of 2023, the tracking metrics and goals that sales leaders are setting for 2023, and then how sales leaders like myself and our colleagues at Aircall track and analyze data to make these informed decisions that we have about what are we going to do better today, tomorrow, into 2024, and for the next 5 years. So from a sales goal perspective, the first one shouldn't shock anybody in the world who's in the world of sales. So 45% of respondents would have said that exceeding their sales targets and quotas was their number one thing. And so it should be. Okay, so we haven't reinvented the wheel here or found anything anything new, but we can confirm that this is still the number one thing, which is very important to all of us. All right. Secondly, then, 29% of respondents said that making the sales process more efficient was one of their top 3 sales goals. This, to be honest with you, you know, we've done various ones of these over the years. This is the first time that this would have been in the top 3. And when we get deeper into this data, we're going to understand it a little bit more. It is absolutely crucial that your sales process is efficient, because we have experience in HubSpot with our own growing pains where oftentimes prospects have turned around and said to us, can we just buy the software at this point, or are you going to make us sit through another call? So if your process isn't efficient and you're not solving for your customer, taking them on a journey of, okay, here's your problems, this is how the software fixes it, make sure they understand it and close it down. That's what most people want to happen. Sometimes we can overcomplicate that, oversell it, not understand what they really want. So always looking and iterating on your sales process is really important, and ensuring that that's efficient. And the way that we need to ensure that we're doing that is talking to closed won deals, and in particular closed lost deals, and saying, hey, was it us? And sometimes it turns out it was you. So it's very important we understand the difference between they didn't want the product, or sometimes they just didn't buy you. Okay. The third thing then is upselling and cross-selling to your existing customer base. This is absolutely paramount. One of the easiest, people to sell to is people who are already buying something from you. They understand your product, they trust you probably, and as a result, it can be easy to say, well, look, you have product X, let's look at product Y and see how that can also accelerate whatever you're trying to achieve with them. So that is a really big focus for business these days. It's not just one and done with customers, always looking to land and expand with people. And that's a very important part of building recurring revenue models into businesses, and obviously huge for us within the SaaS space. We like to, get a couple of products in there, really build the trust there, implement it really well, use our partners like Hubble to help us accelerate that. And as a result, people end up just buying more of our software as their business grows in line with the needs. Cool. So the next thing we want to look at here is actually capturing the right data, analyzing it, and using it. Okay. So this is the difficult part of the whole data world. So when we looked at all the respondents of what sales metrics are most important to track, again, we actually had a bit of a shock when we looked at the data here, because this is very different from other years. There were 2 places here that I'm actually just going to point out initially, and that is the top, and we'll call it the bottom of this graph, okay? That's average profit margin and customer acquisition costs. Now, remember that this is sales leaders that we're actually going to here, and oftentimes what sales leaders care about, as we saw first, is targets, quotas, exceeding them, and this second one here, which is growth. All right. So in a lot of businesses, we think about growth at any cost. But we've learned over the last couple of years that we need to be a little bit more considered about what does a good deal look like. Okay, we can be growing year on year, no problem, but we can be losing money hand over fist. And we as sales leaders need to understand, are we making money on this deal? How much time has gone into it? How much effort has gone into it? How much marketing cost has gone into it? How much servicing cost is potentially going into something like this? And ensuring that we know what that average profit margin is. And of course, feeding into that is the customer acquisition cost is so important. Knowing what it's costing to bring in a customer for us and having those numbers down so that we're on top of that. That is one of the most important parts of real growth. So what we can have is growth for the sake of growth, and then we can have real growth. So this is what we want to focus on when we talk about growth here is, make sure you know and understand what a good deal for you looks like. If you're doing any form of, discounting or anything like that, you and your finance people, you have a framework as to where you can go, where your margins need to be at, and sometimes when you need to walk away from a deal. That's very important, because there's nothing worse than, having a lot of customers or clients or whatever your business is sitting on your books, you're servicing it and you're just losing money on it. It's a crazy way for us to think. Okay. Conversion rate is a very important one, and it is a huge one for us in HubSpot. Looking at how many people are coming into the funnel and how many of those we're actually converting into a deal, because that feeds into things like the customer acquisition cost, and as a result, our average profit margin. How long is it taking us to get from one point of the sale process to the other? We probably overanalyze this at some points, but this is a huge part of my job as a director, is looking at our conversion rates, the efforts we're putting in at the top of the funnel, and is that actually producing real dollars and euros and pounds for us at the bottom. Okay. This is another really big area that we focus on, which is obviously sales productivity metrics. And when we look at some other data in a minute, we'll be able to double down into that. Why this is really huge for us is that we have a very productive sales force, because of a lot of the changes that happened in the world over the last couple of years. You know, productivity in the office was thought to be fantastic. Then we went into an environment where we were all remote. And then everyone said, well, that's been better. And then it was decided that that's not better in a lot of different companies. And then we went into a hybrid environment, and now we see people with a lot of return to work. So productivity metrics are very important for us to look at and understand what's really driving them, okay? Because there can be, I suppose, anomalies in here that make you think things are going great or things are going bad. And it's easy for us to assign this to different types of activities. So knowing and understanding your sales productivity metrics are absolutely essential. So I'm going to pop to the next slide, because that brings us nicely into something that was, again, a big shock for us when we began to look at this data for 2023. So when we thought about, okay, which sales rep productivity metrics do sales leaders and managers plus kind of care about, this came out as the big one, which obviously, if you are in the CRM selling space, this is very good. So we like to show you this slide, okay? But transparently, we were shocked by this being 47% of respondents. And the obvious reason for that is we went from very much in office to hybrid and remote style of environments. And we need to kind of understand, okay, like, where's the business? How are we doing? What does productivity look like? All of those things. So for me, this is absolutely key. And to link back to what the guy said earlier, the CRM is only as good as people use it. Okay. And particularly, I think in office for years, there was, you know, many different clunky systems people have put into place, and, you know, very heavy admin, pieces of CRM admin, because to some extent it wasn't as important. In today's environment, with the hybrid worlds that we have, it is absolutely essential that your CRM usage is exceptionally high, so you have clean and accurate data. I literally cannot do my job if that's not good. I would cease to exist, basically. Okay, so I need to be able to come in and get a very clear idea of what does our activity metrics look like? How many deals are we creating a day? How many discovery calls are we having? How many demos are we doing? How many of those are turning into close one? And then what are the trend lines against those, based on where we should be in the year? Are we up or are we down? Without a CRM, without it being used correctly and our reps actually getting in there and doing it, we'd be in big trouble. So the good thing for us in HubSpot is run on HubSpot. Reps find it very easy to use. There's a lot of great things in there for them. So all of their day-to-day is done in there. So anything I need to see and any data I need to understand, it's there for me. If that's an issue for you today, make sure you're doing something about it. If you come away with nothing else, make sure you're doing something about that, because that will tell you you're about to have a problem a long time before you have the problem, because that's too late. So make sure that this is good. All right. This was another one, our second one here, which was calls made, which was a big change. Okay. So, and I include HubSpot in this next statement, right? For years, we tried to be clever than the conversation. Okay. In sales, we want to do everything, but have to, you know, make calls, do all that. That's the heavy lifting. That's the hard stuff. And we built some really cool tools thinking, you know, we're probably going to eat into this a little bit and do all of that. What we found is that a lot of the tools we were building were very much accelerators to this as a process. You will never be able to outweigh the benefit of having one-to-one conversations with people or with groups of people about what their problems are and how potentially you can solve and service that for them. So calls made is a really big one for us, in that we just need to ensure that our sales reps are having conversations with people and talking to them and understanding about their problem, how urgent they are, all of that stuff. For it, we use all our productivity sales tools then to accelerate that. So we use clever things, obviously, like, sequences and all these different pieces, which really help us to accelerate that conversation, manage that process efficiently as well. So everything doesn't need to be a phone call, and they're not walking away from us going, these guys will not stop asking us to get on phone calls or whatever else. That's a really big one that's there. And finally, probably the biggest one for us outside of the, we call it now the main two, is the accelerator, which I just talked about, which is the use of those sales tools. So we have, I said, many different sales tools that we're using across in HubSpot. We need to ensure that people are, obviously you said, using them, that we're seeing good conversion from them, and that we're knowing where to invest ourselves, because I said there are certain plugins that we will take and pop into HubSpot to ensure that we're doing the best for our sales force, and they have particularly all the data that they need to contact the right people and put our solutions in front of them. So we look at this in a really big way. Okay. So hopefully that's given you some insight into what we think about and what we care about in HubSpot. It changes every year, just like you guys. Okay. So the big one that I would really walk away from here is think about your CRM usage, how your reps are using it, how they're engaging with it, how they're using their data. If they get good at that, it will accelerate your business.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I think that's great, and it's given us a lot of insights. And can I say also, it's so refreshing and also reassuring to hear that HubSpot as an organization is also facing, these same sales challenges. Because someone might think, oh, you guys have built this platform, so you have resolved all of your issues now. Your sales process is perfect, but you guys are also learning through this experience as well. And obviously, you get to speak with all the sales directors and bring us these insights. And just to tie that last slide you had about the usage back to the marketing, considering like our topic today is how we align the two. Someone from marketing may think, oh, but how is this useful to us right now to know, for example, how many calls are being made or how many meetings? But that's also an insight that you can bring into your marketing campaign. If you know that most of your prospects prefer to speak to someone on the phone or prefer to book a meeting with them without having to reach out, there are tools within HubSpot that you can incorporate in your marketing campaigns for people who are further down the funnel that can, again, help align the two and give them what they need. So thank you so much for that. That was great.
Stephen, I was wondering if you could just chat a little bit, looking at all those metrics, about the importance of using leading versus trailing KPIs and how you use that as a strategy to see where things are going versus where you've been in the past.
Yeah, so that's a really important part of my job, is seeing where those trend lines are, particularly on things like we call our leading indicator is our activity. Okay, so when we think about activity, we always need to be at a specific level in our business to ensure that we're looking to drive conversations with new businesses out there. If that falls off, all our lagging indicators then fall off. So if we think of the equation this way, if we're having enough conversations, that turns into enough deals created, which turns into enough discoveries, which turns into enough demos, which turns into enough closed won deals. Okay. Everything is a consequence of activity at the top. So the moment, what you'll see with a lot of businesses, they start looking at the end, closed won deals and dollars in the bank and that stuff. By the time that problem has happened and you realize you're not hitting your number, it's too late. You should have been looking back here at what's activity looking like. If activity is good, then we move on to the next metric, which is deals created. If that's positive, there's no block there. If deals created isn't turning into discoveries, for instance, we know, okay, there's some training required there. They're creating the wrong types of deals. They're talking to the wrong people. We're always working nice and backwards like that. So we're always looking to go green across the board, but we start at the top of the funnel. A lot of people look at the bottom of the funnel and where their quota attainment is at and where their targets are at and go, okay, we have a problem. Probably started 3 to 6 to 9 months ago. So you're in trouble if that's where you're looking. So if you're smart about how you use the CRM and use sales productivity tools, use activity and then on to deals created, work through your line this way. And that will tell you very early on if you're going to have trouble or not.
I couldn't agree with that more. That's the number one piece of advice I always give to people setting up and trying to improve their processes. And I think that speaks to also what we were talking about, Maria, how important it is to have that really good handover between marketing and sales, because that's where you collect so much more data, because you can go so much further up the funnel and get more good data to track that. So you've got such better data to create those leading indicators, as opposed to just, again, looking at the end and being like, why did we miss our target? Well, again, you're late. You need to look at what you're doing at the very top of that funnel and how those interactions are happening. So I think that's such an important part of that.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, look, I'm gonna jump in at this point. Stephen, Carl, Maria, that was fantastic. Thank you kindly. We have 14 minutes left of the webinar available, and I guess as I've put in the chat, this is a good opportunity to open up for questions. If anyone has any questions for any of our speakers, then please do feel free to put them on in the Q&A section now, and I'll keep an eye on it. I guess maybe to kick things off, if I may. I guess you've all spoken a lot around kind of obviously the alignment needed between sales and marketing teams, the data, the reporting, the analytics activity needed in order to kind of track, view what's happening, view where the trends are and whether things are going up or down. I guess if we kind of took a step backwards, there may be some companies out there who, organically are quite lucky in the sense that their sales and marketing teams are aligned. It kind of sometimes happens, be it forced or not. I guess if you were a company that is at the point where they've got as far as they can with organic alignment between the two teams and actually now need to think, okay, what practices can we put in place? What things can we do to improve it, to enable the teams to be much more aligned? Maybe Maria, Carl, we'll start with you, with the two of you. If you were a company trying to understand where to start with this, where would be the place that you would start thinking?
Yeah, I'll hand that to you. I'm happy to jump in, but
sure. Yeah, I'll start first by saying count your blessings, because you are a unicorn of a company, and it's a great thing if they are aligned. It's fantastic. I think going back to what we said earlier, there's always going to be opportunities to improve and look at how you can further optimize. Right? It doesn't always mean optimization shouldn't only happen when there's perceived failure. Optimization should happen at any stage, every stage of the customer journey, regardless if you're failing. There's always going to be, maybe the opportunity won't be at, acquiring new leads and nurturing them and converting them. Maybe the opportunity will be, as Stephen said and Carl said, in upselling other services and delighting them after you've acquired them. So there's always going to be growth opportunities, and I would focus then on that. Also, the example that Carl made about the location, if you look at your data and you start identifying patterns like that, then perhaps that's an opportunity to further grow the business rather than, block that necessarily because it doesn't fit. If you can, of course, right? Maybe it won't be feasible for everyone, but if you have that opportunity, then why not? Carl,
Yeah.
what do you think?
I've lived this. I think that's actually where things get tricky, is when you move from that startup phase to that scale up phase, and you see that a lot where marketing and sales collaboration changes from like turning to your right and just saying, hey, to the point where you're like, oh, we have different departments working in different geographic regions, and we need to set up, you're in that awkward stage where you're establishing processes and things. And I think the number one thing I always recommend is define mutual KPIs and define where you're going to find those reports, and make sure that there's a agreed upon cadence of checking those. So if we're going to say that our KPI is MQLs created, or average time to contact a lead, or any of the fantastic KPIs that Stephen discussed, where do you find that? Where do you go? Like, who's looking at that, and what's the cadence of looking at that and actioning feedback based on that on a regular basis?
Cool. Okay. Good stuff. And Stephen, the follow-up question I was going to have for you was focused around kind of maybe you can give us some ideas of how HubSpot kind of approach this in a proactive way rather than a reactive way. And I think kind of this is resulting from what you said around, you know, the kind of chain of command of, you know, if there's an issue down the funnel here, if you're only realizing that then really you're too late in the day to fix it. You needed to have fixed it 3 months ago. So I guess what things do you see inside of HubSpot in a proactive manner do you guys employ to encourage this alignment? And I guess things I'm thinking of are, you know, is there weekly calls? Is there a cadence of calls? Is there specific HubSpot dashboards or stuff that's shared? Maybe you could give us a little bit of insight into those feedback loops.
Yeah, so again, we've been through all the growing pains of this, and what we have found is regular meetings and simple communication is generally the answer here of what you want. When I say regular meetings, we meet with marketing weekly. They are very clear on, you know, what our targets are for the upcoming months and how much of that needs to be from, you know, QLs generated from marketing and what our expectations are. So we're very aligned on we're all behind this one goal, which is, you know, hitting our sales quotas. How much of that actually needs to come from marketing and what's the plan behind that? So ensuring that then we understand, okay, they need to deliver X amount of QLs from it, you know, what campaigns and what assets are they going to market with that we can also leverage in our outreach? They may be doing, you know, webinars, they may be having, you know, white papers going out there, they may have, you know, insight pieces going, and ensuring then that our sales team are all behind the, you know, the same messages. So we're going to market with a very unified approach between marketing and sales, and between us, we're hitting the sales quota. So we don't have different goals. It's not that we think about, well, you have a QL goal and I have a dollars goal. We all have a dollars goal, and we think about, well, your part to play in it is this, our part to play in it is this, and we all need to have our deliverables for it. We have had every convoluted and complicated way of doing this as we grew, and as Carl said, it went from, you know, being able to turn to somebody over there and say hey to that person not even being in the same continent as me. So we had to get smart about how we do it. Simple communication, regular meetings, and all working towards one goal. That'll get you there.
Amazing. And so Stephen, you referenced the kind of split goals. You know, say for example, you need to generate 100 leads. I think you referenced X amount of them are focused at coming from marketing, X amount coming from BDR teams, X amount coming from, you know, SDR teams maybe. I think and Rika in the chat on a question has kind of highlighted how that approach of splitting the volume of leads that come from different sources and different teams within the company, albeit, you know, sounds like a great idea. If there's misalignment with those KPIs, could potentially cause any problems. I guess, Stephen, or I can see Maria, you nodding as well. Would you have any kind of advice for this situation and the misalignment?
Yeah, I think just from our perspective, just very simply, from our perspective, always be ready to iterate. You know, we can make plans. We are making plans right now for 24, and they're going to look, percentages are going to look like this, this, and this. What you'll find will happen is that they'll change. So be prepared to iterate.
Yeah, absolutely. And Maria?
Yeah, well, what I was going to add to that is understanding that why. Why are we trying to track these specific metrics by each team? Because when I think about it from a marketing point of view, maybe someone that the BDM team will speak to has been influenced by marketing. So then it becomes a little bit more, you know, chaotic and blurry. The lines are a little bit blurry. I think it's, again, going back to those overarching goals and understanding how we're all working together and why it benefits us all working together.
And just to follow up on that, beyond just goals being mismatched, make sure to take a look further on and look at your incentives. What kind of systems have you built into your company to incentivize what behaviors? You know, I can't tell you how many organizations I've worked in or I've worked with where sales and marketing have built-in incentives that actually make them work against each other. And it's sort of like, man, everybody here is behaving irrationally, trying to work against each other. But then you look at it, you're like, but we are financially incentivizing our sales team to do something that is like to compete with marketing or something like that. Like, have you taken a step back and said, how does this affect maybe our commission structure, or what incentive is, you know, in all kinds of different ways that you might have? But though, like, we're very agile, I think, as organizations to update our KPIs and our targets and our goals, but we are slow to maybe update the incentives that are behind those. And those behaviors can follow, are more likely to follow your incentives than just to follow, hey guys, this is really important, you know. And so always make sure that you're looking at that from a holistic standpoint.
Cool. No, good stuff, Carl. And I guess a couple of minutes left just to wrap up one final question that we've had. And I think this question is kind of focused at scale, but with different marketing teams, different size sales teams, and the ownership of kind of inbound inquiries that come into the system. Where would you, and the question is specifically around kind of, you know, if you're a smaller marketing team, where would you have those inquiries come into? Is it into the hubs, into the marketing team to give them awareness on what's coming in, what the questions are, what the inquiries are, or does it skip and go directly to a BDR in the sales team to follow up, and you risk losing that kind of marketing awareness of what's coming in and what isn't? Let's go with you, Carl, and then Maria.
Is this Jen's question here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Would you like me to start, Carl?
I think I know what your answer is going to be. Is it lead scoring?
Part of it is lead scoring, right? The other part is, I think the question is twofold. So the first question is it best practice for the marketing team to be the first point of contact? I think that depends on how we set up our lead management framework, right? And it all depends on the data entry point as well. So obviously someone who has directly filled out a form, you know, to contact you, may be more suitable to speak directly to sales, because that person is, further down the funnel. While someone who has downloaded an asset, for us, they would usually go to a lead nurture campaign until they're more ready to actually show us that they want to speak to one of us. So it does depend on that first touch point. The second question that we see there is that that person, John, is saying they're the only member on the marketing team, feeling a bit stretched. Very relatable. Let me tell you that. And they feel like they're missing out on the queries because we don't know what the queries are. So that, to me, there's a second question there about why are we not seeing those queries? Are the two systems perhaps where the sales inquiries are sent, is that information not visible to us? Because if that is, then we're going back to Carl's point that was shown earlier on the slide about those integrations, about the two platforms speaking to each other, sharing data, and providing you with that visibility. I think, as I said, it's not an easy, simple answer. I think it's both reviewing the lead management framework, how leads are coming in and how they should be managed, but it's also a discussion to be had with sales, looking at that process and how the two platforms could be communicating. Carl?
Yeah, exactly. I think you said it better than I could. That again, the answer is it depends, and the best way is to look at that and map that out and say, if we get this kind of inquiry, what's the best answer? You know, if we get this kind of inquiry, how do we make those determinations? That can be really, really helpful in that regard. So take a step back, map it out, think about it, use some AI tools, maybe, you know. And another thing is to also ask yourself, if you're getting asked the same question often and often, like, do you have a process for that? Is there content that you could deliver there? You know, that's another thing
Absolutely.
that I lose track of.
FAQs can be really helpful in that. You know, we've got chatbots as well available that can help resolve those first queries that prospects might have on the website before, again, they decide to speak to us. And taking that back to the dating, before we close, to that analogy, having been married for 10 years now, if this is a partnership between sales and marketing, it's so important for the two teams to communicate. That's all it comes down to. Communicate, speak about your pain point, try to work together rather than against each other.
Maria, are you sure you didn't propose on the first date?
Well, I did move to China from Greece in a month after I met my now husband. So what can I say? I'm a risky person. Maybe don't listen to me.
Good stuff. Well, look, everyone, right on cue time wise. Just to highlight our second webinar in this 6 webinar series. So 2 weeks today, 29th of November, we'll have Shireen Robinson from Hubble focusing on how you can really foster those connections and kind of really improve that lead management and tracking. So how can you do things like segmentation? You know, how are you really providing personalized experience and really engaging experience to your leads as they go through the funnel? So we hope to see all of you there. And just one last big thank you to Maria and Carl from Hubble for your expertise and experience here. And again, a huge thank you for our guest, Stephen Higgins from HubSpot, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, guys. Take care.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.